Inside Boxing Daily on the Grueling Truth Sports Network. Inside Boxing Daily is brought to you by BetNow.eu. You can go to BetNow.eu, use the promo code TRUTH50 to get a 50% cashback bonus on your first deposit up to $1,000. We are also brought to you by Seat Giant, where you can go to Seat Giant, use the promo code TGT to get a 5% discount on all your ticket purchases. And, as always, by Jackie Richardson and Alex Ramos at the Retired Boxers Foundation. Make sure you check them out on Facebook. I am your co-host for Inside Boxing Daily, Mike Goodpaster. And right now I'd like to welcome in my co-host, the immortal Jeremiah Preisser.
Yes, the immortal. I'm here. I'm happy. Let's go.
All right, we have a special guest. This is Wednesday night. It's Raspanti night is what we call it now. Help me welcome to the show, author of Intimate Warfare with Dennis Taylor, pictures by Ed Mulholland. You don't ever want to forget that, because if you're from Indiana like I am, Ed Mulholland's pictures are what catch your attention more than those letters they have in books. Help me welcome to the show, John Raspanti. How you doing, John?
Doing great, Mike. It's Italian night here, and I'm loving it and ready to go.
It's Italian night. Jeremiah, are you Italian?
No Italian blood. Actually, my mother was under the impression that we were half for a little while there because, I don't know, I think it's because she liked margaritas or something. I don't know, but
yeah. Wait a second.
No,
I
know.
Aren't margaritas Mexican?
Yes.
No, my mother is pretty culturally defunct. She's not. It's like after we were half Italian, all of a sudden we became half Russian because she likes vodka, and I'm like, Mom, I don't think that there's like a genetic predisposition to like vodka. And anyway, she doesn't understand culture or science, so don't berate me.
So what nationality is Preisser?
So Preisser is actually a German last name. It has a Prussian origin, but my father was adopted, so I went ahead and took the DNA test and got down to the bottom of what I really am. And I'm a third Irish, but most of my ancestors are from the British Isles.
Oh, you're one of those. All right. Should we keep him on the show, John? Italian night, we can't have some Brit running around on the show.
I know. That explains a lot. All right. I get it now.
It does. All right. Tonight, we're going to go a little off topic because, let's face it, that's what Wednesday nights are for, because we're right in the middle of a week where nothing but stupid shit happens in boxing. Just like, Tonight, I think what I'm going to do, John, is I'm going to name Jeremiah my franchise co-host.
Okay.
But if you want, you could be the interim co-host if anything were to happen to him.
Okay.
All right.
Sounds like a deal.
So tonight, what we're going to talk about, and hopefully it will be of interest to somebody out there. If not, hey, it's interesting to me and John, so we're going to talk about it, whether you like it or not.
Right.
We're going to talk about basically the significance of the Rocky film franchise on boxing, because I think when I look at this, John, the thing that really sticks out to me here is the movie comes out in 1976, wins the Oscars. It's the same time we had the 1976 Olympic gold medal boxing team. You still have Muhammad Ali on the scene, and I think this is where boxing exploded, because you correct me if I'm wrong, because you're a lot older than me, but at the end of the 70s, we would get Leonard against Benitez, Hagler Antifermo, Larry Holmes versus Leroy Jones, all on the same night. And I think a lot of that reason was because of this film series, the Olympic boxing team, Muhammad Ali. I don't think boxing outside of maybe pre-1950, I mean, boxing was a huge sport back then because of all these things.
Oh, absolutely. It was huge. It was fun. There were so many ways to watch it. And then, of course, when Rocky burst on the scene, nobody really had heard much about this movie. There was no buzz about it. Even when I heard something about it, I was a kid. I was 20 years old, I think.
God, you were 20 years old, 1976?
No, I'm wrong. I'm thinking about Rocky 2. I was 18 in 1976. I don't want to age myself here. Jeez.
Damn, he's old, Jeremiah. I'm usually the old guy on the
Yeah,
show.
yeah. Well, hey, John, that explains a lot.
Oh.
Yeah, there we go. Touche.
Don't say touche. Nobody's allowed to say touche. It's an inside joke.
Why?
I don't know.
Well,
if you've ever talked to Steve Risley, former Indiana Hoosier, you'll know why. He's been banned from saying it because he overuses it. I don't want to have to ban you either. So.
It's the first time I've said that word, so there you go.
Well,
but back to 1976. Believe it or not, I was already a big boxing fan, had been all my life. When I heard about this movie, I kind of groaned. Because there aren't very many really good boxing movies. Most of them are garbage. And I had heard Sylvester Stallone's name, but I didn't really know that much about him. I was already into movies. 1976, let's see, I was in high school. So I was doing a lot of acting and playing sports and doing a lot of stuff. But how I ended up going to the movie, which I think is a little bit interesting, is not because I wanted to go to it. A friend of mine wanted to go. He talked me into going to see it. I was grumbling. I think it was in December of 1976. I think it opened in December. I think I went like a week after it had opened. And I went on a Friday night, and the place was pretty crowded somewhat, and I was actually a little surprised by that theater. And the thing that blew me away, Mike, and I know everybody knows this now, but this did not happen when I went to the movies, and I never remembered this happening before, was initially when the movie started, it was very quiet. There was a little grumbling with Rocky and the turtle scene, and a lot of people were laughing, Cuff and Link, as you remember, but it was also kind of touching. But then as the movie got going and he got a shot, people really started to get revved up, and I had never seen that. And of course, then when the fight happens, people are standing, people are cheering. I mean, we know all this now, but you just go back to that time. It was shocking, and people are crying, cheering, screaming like it's a real fight. And I mean, I was completely blown away. I was, of course, standing and doing all that stuff too. I had never experienced that. Haven't experienced anything like that since. It was a little bit in Rocky II, but not like that. And that was what I was just wowed by, that whole experience of seeing that movie that night. I still remember that vividly, and it was just a great memory.
You know, I got one of my buddies that lives in New Jersey who's probably about your age, and he gives me the same story. And it was such great that he went back again. But he said everybody was like they were at a closed circuit fight, and that the fight was real. And my first experience with it was this. I mean, 1976, I was a boxing fan because my dad loved boxing. We watched all the fights, all Now, I don't remember a lot before 1976, but I remember, I think this was on the Sunday night movie, and I remember being excited all week because, of course, not like it is now where you can look ahead on the TV box and see what's coming on more than a week ahead of time. And I remember, you know, we'd get the TV guide, and it was a big deal to get the TV guide to find out what was going to be on, John. And you open it up, Sunday night movie, Rocky. And I loved boxing. I remember watching that movie on a Sunday night. I usually had to go to bed at 10. My dad let me stay up later. I watched it with my mom, my sister. And the movie had a huge impact on me, so much so that, you know, I wanted a heavy bag. I lived in Indiana. Can't get a heavy bag there. But my dad, my next door neighbor, his name was Charlie Walston, I think, actually gave my dad an old Army bag. My dad was a construction worker. He filled it up with sawdust, and for the next 10 years, I beat the hell out of that bag. And Jeremiah, since you're like 12, when's the first time you saw Rocky?
I can't even remember, to be honest with you. I mean,
Jeez, why did we have this? Irish, Russian, Mexican on the show anyway? Jeez.
Ban this
Italian,
guy.
damn it.
Italian, whatever.
Yeah, right.
Well,
Italian,
hey, man.
there you go. Now you're Italian. You're okay, Jeremiah.
Well, and the thing is, you know, I watched the movie. You know, when the first time I saw it, again, I'm young here. I'm trying though, okay. The first time I saw it, it didn't have such a profound impact on me, but you know, of course, the thing that struck me as most important, watching the flick was not actually the boxing part so much. It was, only years after until I finally became a dyed-in-the-wool boxing fan. But I was just struck by the story more than anything else. I mean, it was just this, it had boxing, it was a boxing flick, but, just the journeyman to triumph thing, of course it ended in, right, it didn't end in, right. It was just this never say die attitude. And, it was just a good story. I mean, that's what I appreciated most about it. I mean, Stallone, I never thought was an excellent actor or anything, but that role seemed to kind of shape himself, into better than he did some of his other flicks. And, I mean, it was kind of tough for me to relate because I never lived on the East Coast, and, the Philadelphia accent and, all this other stuff I had a tough time relating to. But it was a story for me that was the best thing of all, just him trying to keep it all together and motivate himself and, reach the top. And yeah, I don't know how old I was, honestly. I don't know, maybe like 12. I can't quite remember.
12 years old. Jeez.
I know, but it was also a little different for me too, because I didn't really come from a boxing household. I mean, it wasn't something like my dad had always paid attention and, loved Joe Frazier and always cheered for him, but he just wasn't, a hardcore boxing fan. He was just a casual and, he just liked the movie itself, and I ended up doing the same thing.
Yeah, and this movie wins an Oscar. If you remember, John, Jack Nicholson handed the Oscar to Sylvester Stallone. The interesting thing is, United Artists, I think from what I read, offered Stallone like well over $250,000 to sell them the rights to the screenplay if he agreed not to star in the movie. But then, from what I heard, the budget was lowered to like $1 million, and the studio was no longer allowed to keep Stallone from starring. And from what I read, I think he was paid like $20,000 for the script, and then a Screen Actor Guild minimum of like $300 or $400 per week. So I think he did all right with that. And the interesting thing is, if you look at the first screenplay that he wrote about it, I think from what I remember is Adrian was Jewish, Mickey was a racist, and the Paulie character was Adrian's Jewish mother. Apollo Creed, I think, was Jamaican, from what I read. And the script actually ended with Rocky throwing the fight and opening a pet store for Adrian with the money he made.
Yeah, that's why you have rewrites and rethinking and all those things. And see, the other thing, too, about Sylvester Stallone is I think I remember he only had $106 in the bank when they were offering him all this money, and his wife was pregnant, and they got up to like, $275,000. He kept turning him down, and you can imagine you got $106 in the bank, and your wife is pregnant. You got part of you has got to be saying, "Am I nuts?" I mean, $275,000 in like 1975 or early '76, before they filmed the movie, and he's beyond being a struggling actor. That took more than just guts and belief in oneself, to do that. And they and I also read, Mike and Jeremiah, that when they were actually shooting the film, some of the people in the crew were snickering. They thought that this movie was a dog, that it was going to die. It would probably open and close in one day. And so, see, Stallone related so much to Rocky, as I'm sure everybody knows, because, on that great poster that I had in my room, his whole life was $1 million to one shot. Stallone's life was somewhat like that. I mean, he wasn't going anywhere as an actor. I mean, he was struggling. He couldn't even get an audition when he tried to apply for a role in New York City. Sal Mineo told him, "Get the hell out of here." He tried to act tough, and Sal Mineo said, "Leave. I'm not impressed." So this was his $1 million and a one shot, and that's why I think he held so tightly to, this is my chance to star in a movie. And he took the percentage, and they gave it to him with no problem. He said, "Can I have 10 points or whatever of the box office?" They said, "Yeah," because they figured the movie would make $10. Well, Sylvester Stallone made $1 million the first 6 months of the movie being out. So he really had the laugh on everybody. Some of the crew, the studio. I mean, you're talking about hitting the lotto here. And he wrote the film, like you said, which was so unique. Because a lot of actors didn't write movies very often, very rare, and star in them. He was just, and so after that, he was considered a god because of his talent. But as Jeremiah said, he's no great actor, but man, he wrote that part for himself, and he knew what he was doing. I mean, he is great as Rocky.
Yeah, and don't you think the reason that movie struck such a chord is the majority of people are Rocky? I mean, you're not necessarily a boxer,
Absolutely.
but everybody is just looking for that one big chance. And let's face it, everybody usually gets that one big chance. Most people do not take advantage of that chance. And I think watching this movie, and the reason the first movie, it's still my favorite movie no matter what the genre is, it was, number one, the way it was filmed, because it was kind of drab, dark. It kind of reminded you of the old film noir movies that I know you liked. And it gave a certain ambiance when you watched that movie that made you think you were seeing something special. To watch this man get this shot, to watch him fall in love with a woman, and when they both were people that I think they had to be considering they were going to die alone at some point. So, I mean, this is most people at some point. I think that's why this struck such a chord.
Oh, absolutely. And the dialogue, I mean, the film was so gritty, as you said, and I'll never forget, there are certain scenes you never forget, and one of them that just always pops into my head, of course, is when he's yelling at Mickey about, at least you had your shot, and that plays, and I never had a shot, this doesn't work, this doesn't work. And that's the brilliant acting and writing on Stallone's part. And I also read, here's another little tidbit, Mike, you probably know this, Jeremiah, that the first time they shot that scene and Stallone knocked it out of the park, I'm talking about the one where he's yelling at Mickey, the cameraman, there was no film on the camera.
Yeah.
So, they had to do it again, and you can imagine Sylvester Stallone like, oh my God, I nailed it, and they had to do that again. But then the other one is where Mickey yells at him before that, and so that's why he's so mad at Mickey when Mickey comes to his apartment and wants to manage him, and he calls him a tomato, and you know what you are, you're a waste, and it's a, he says, what does he say? It's a waste of life, and it's like, wow. And you're right, Mike. I think that's the ultimate underdog, but also people, that's life. We struggle, and you get your shot, and you better take it because you might not ever get it. And I think that's why it touches people to this day too. I mean, I've seen the movie a lot of times, and I can watch it again, and it still gets me just because it's just so well done. It's such a good movie.
Yeah, and the other thing is this. Did you know this, Jeremiah? The studio, when they wanted to get the movie away from Rocky, actually was interested in Burt Reynolds, Ryan O'Neal, or James Caan to play the part of Rocky.
Is that right? That's interesting. You're trying to examine some of the fits there, and Burt, I like. I was always a fan of Reynolds, and he seemed like he could kind of turn on that gritty side if he needed to, but he was also, I think, a bit hairy to play that role. But
well, Ryan O'Neal was in the great classic The Main Event with Barbra Streisand. I know that was one of John's top 10 boxing movies of all time when we did that show, wasn't it, John?
I think that was Christopher Shelton's favorite movie of all time, Mike, if I remember.
Don't make fun of Christopher. Christopher liked the Duran movie.
I have not seen The Main Event. I purposely will not watch that film because it looks too stupid. So
I saw it like 10 times just because it was a boxing movie.
Bigger.
I just want to see the titties, so I watched it 3 times.
There's none in that. You got that mixed up with the Roberto Duran movie.
Yeah, that's what we were talking about. That's all I heard.
Oh, hell. All right. I also think one of my favorite parts was the skating rink.
Oh, yeah.
Why do you fight, John? Because I can't sing or dance.
Yeah.
But, and the other thing was, I probably, that was the first realistic fight scenes I've seen in a movie. I know it was over the top. We know that
Yeah.
cutting your eye open's not going to make the swelling go down, and then you can see. And the body shots in
Yeah.
the 14th round did not look very devastating, but I think that was about as realistic as we'd seen in a movie up to that point.
Yeah, and I'm trying to remember because I used to know this stuff, but I think Stallone got that idea from the part where he gets up, after getting knocked down by Apollo and he staggers against the ropes. That was from when Rocky Graziano, I think. I don't want to say I'm 100% sure, but when Graziano got knocked down by Sugar Ray Robinson and tried to get up, or maybe it was against Zale and he staggered against the ropes. That's where he got the idea and stood up. Yeah. So and then the eye cut was also from a real fight. Cut me, Mick. I don't want to do it. Go ahead, cut me. I mean, that was one of the most dramatic scenes in the film too. See, but I'm so competitive, and Mike knows this because we talked about it. I was thinking, yeah. I mean, I'm thinking, yeah. I mean, I got to see here. I don't care. I got to see. So you're just so revved up. You're thinking, yeah, I want to win. I want to see. I got to do this. I don't care. And again, that's the reason the film just touched so many people and got you revved up, got you going, because if you can relate to that if you play sports and you can relate to that kind of competition and desire, then that movie's going to get you. And that's exactly what it does.
Yeah, and the other thing that I read at one point was Charlie Chaplin actually wrote to Stallone and told him how great the movie was. It reminded him of one of the silent film stars' characters he used to play. And Stallone turned down Chaplin's invitation to visit. And Chaplin, I think, lived, was it Sweden or Switzerland at the time? And he died. Yeah, and he died just a few months later. And he also turned down an offer from Elvis to watch the Rocky movie with him in Memphis. And then a few months later, the King passed away. So I can tell you this, if you ask Sylvester Stallone to go watch a Rocky movie with you and he doesn't do it, you're a dead man, Jeremiah.
Uh-oh.
Yeah, it's like the what's that thing going around that there's that guy who used to play on the teenage drama show, Canadian drama show, Drake. Oh yeah, that's his name. I guess he's a rapper or something. But yeah, like if he takes a picture with you, apparently you lose.
That's not I guess true though, because the Raptors won it all.
Yeah, I know. But then Andrew Tabiti took a picture with him afterwards and ended up losing. So it's a weird thing, man. But yeah, no, it's well, I'm sure Stallone himself probably has a little hard feelings towards himself for not doing those sorts of things. But I think that's why Stallone is still so motivated today. I mean, you guys talked about the underdog thing. I mean, he's still a big fight fan. I mean, he's in guys' dressing rooms, shaking their hands, hanging out with them. I mean, him and Schwarzenegger are actually guys that I admire a little bit because, you think of these guys and they were, you talked about how they were underdogs before, and especially guys like, Schwarzenegger, right, who had to learn an entire new language, basically told his parents he was going to go be a bodybuilding legend in America, did it, became, a politician in in California. I mean, you got to appreciate stuff like that. I think that's what motivates them to this day. I mean, I think they're able to keep those things into perspective, and it humbles them. I mean, to me, Stallone doesn't really come across as a flashy kind of guy. I mean, he looks like he might wear like a nice timepiece or something. But when I look at his clothes and I look at his demeanor, I look at the fact that he's still grinding it out in the gym at like, I don't know, what is he, like 70 years old right now?
72.
Yeah, 72. I mean, you got to appreciate guys like that.
So steroids aren't necessarily bad for you in the long run.
Yeah, well, yeah. I mean, he's been doing them so long. Whoever he's working with probably has it down to a science. But honestly, if he does it as an actor, who really cares? I mean, a lot of these guys are probably doing it. Yeah, it's not like Disney or Time Warner or 20th Century Fox or doing random drug tests on you. They don't give a shit, nor should they.
Well, I think because from what I heard, Raspanti and Taylor and Ed Mulholland were all juicing when they did the Intimate Warfare book.
That's not true, but we're not under VADA, so I can deny that completely, Mr. Goodpaster, but that is not true.
Yeah.
Would not do. Hardy, har, har, har.
But I can tell you this: if you're interested in that book, you can find it on Amazon. Go ahead, Jeremiah. That was a shameless plug. 25 minutes in, but go ahead.
Yeah, well, it's all right. It's all right. We all got the book, but
It's a great
you should.
book.
Too.
So.
Yeah, well, and my thing is
And how
just
about this? Let's turn it into this. I think that guys like Arturo Gatti and Mickey Ward, those are kind of like Rocky guys.
Yep.
Yeah, yeah, of course. I mean, Mickey Ward too. I mean, I think, the thing about Mickey Ward is we played the Gotti Ward fight one, and they're talking about how Mickey Ward said that most people who can't make their weight afterwards are, like he was able to stay at 140 pounds for his entire career, and he was of the opinion that if you jumped weight, you just weren't training as hard. And actually, Arturo Gatti was kind of an example of that. But Mickey Ward is a guy who used to, like go to his 9 to 5 and grind it out every day. And you really like guys like that, guys who are professional, guys who have that nitty gritty stuff, can show up every day and hit the gym, don't need to be told to do their road work. You're not phone calling them and like, hey, it's a crack ass at dawn, get your butt up and go for a run. Like Ward is just, Ward was just one of those guys who did it. But yeah, I mean, you got to love both those guys because of their demeanor, and in fact, they put on a fantastic fight for us. But that's the appeal of boxing. I mean, that's one of the reasons why it might be a fringe sport, but that's one of the reasons why it still has so much mass appeal.
I don't think it's a fringe sport. I think at one point it was the biggest sport in this country the first half of the century. I think it's kind of played itself out of that. But the other one that I want to talk about here, especially with the Rocky One, is Smokin' Joe Frazier and Chuck Wepner, because both had something to do with this movie. I mean, Joe Frazier used to run the steps of the Philadelphia Museum of Art, and let's face it, Joe Frazier beat his meat in a slaughterhouse, and that's where Sylvester Stallone got this from. So, what do you think about the take that, maybe he sold short Chuck Wepner and Joe Frazier when you look at all the money he made?
I don't know. But back to just for a second, he borrowed. He heard things. He used. If you watch Somebody Up There Likes Me, they have a scene very similar with Rocky Graziano that's in Rocky, where they're all they're in a bar listening to the fight with Tony Zale, and then in Rocky they're all watching it in the bar on television, right? So he got that from that, no doubt about that. He's got Joe Frazier in the film. I don't know. I think he's made peace with Chuck Wepner. Obviously Wepner is a great guy, Mike. We were just talking about it a little while ago. We've had him on the show. He's a fabulous guy. I don't think he might have been bitter for a while, but he doesn't seem like he is anymore. Stallone tried to get him in one of the Rocky films. I mean, I don't know what exactly he was supposed to do. I mean, obviously the basis of Rocky was from Chuck Wepner's story, but Rocky was Italian, he was Italian stallion.
Yeah, I don't think there's enough similarity there where, he should have gotten rich off of it.
Exactly, and it actually annoys me sometimes when I read people that say that he's a copy of Chuck Wepner, because it's not true. No. Rocky wasn't known as a big-time bleeder like Chuck was. He was a journeyman. He had a worse record than Chuck.
Remember, Rocky had never had his nose broke until that first fight with Preisser.
That's right. Broke my nose. How's it look? It's an improvement. Yeah, see, some things you don't forget. Yeah, and so I think he did fine by them. Sylvester Stallone did. I mean, that's his baby. Rocky's his creation, and it's just a phenomenal creation as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, and when you look at Rocky 2, I thought that was an excellent film also. The thing that was funny there is in Rocky 2, where they show every place he ran, I think it was Philadelphia Magazine estimated that Rocky ran 30.61 miles in that last run.
Wow, he was in shape.
And there were 800 Philadelphia children used as extras for Rocky's run from the house to the steps of the Philadelphia Museum of Art. But I think what made, especially the first two movies, so good are just the little things. You know, he goes and sees Father Carmine before the fight, asking to
Yeah.
bless him. You had Adrian and Polly who couldn't go because she'd had the baby. And I had also read where there was an alternate ending there where Adrian actually went to the fight with Polly and they actually witnessed Rocky win it. And they ended it with her in Rocky's arms.
Yeah, there is. Yeah, there is, and also the thing is too that most people don't remember anymore. I remember this well. Is after Rocky, Sylvester Stallone had two films come out, Fist and Paradise Alley, and they were both bombs. And so there was a lot riding on Rocky II in his career. I mean, he had to have a hit, and he was directing. So the first time he's directed a film, so it's his screenplay again, which is no surprise. He's directing, and he's got the extra pressure that he's had two box office bombs in a row. People are saying he's a fluke, he's a one-trick pony, he's all this kind of stuff. So when it came out, and it did well, not as well as the first one, like second movies usually don't, but it was well made. He did a very good job directing. His performance was good. That was huge. I mean, if that movie had bombed, we wouldn't have had any more of the Rocky films. But, yeah, there was a lot riding on Rocky II. I saw that one when I was in junior college and went on the matinee to see it, and it was so cool to see it again and see what he did, the second film, and it was just like, I remember this. There's a little story is I was working at a place. I had a part-time job working at a place in Oakland, and there was a lot of black people that worked there, and we were all sitting around one day at lunch talking about Rocky II, because we had all seen it. And this one guy that I knew, I actually played basketball against his son. He told me, he goes, God, John, he goes, it's incredible. We all went as a family, as a black family, and we were all pulling for Rocky. We wanted Rocky to win. So I just thought that was really cool. That was just the cross appeal that Rocky had. It didn't matter. He was a human being, and you wanted him to win. And that tells you, again, that the underdog story is very powerful.
Yeah, and I'll tell you, though, the thing that really made this film that much better, Jeremiah, was the fact that Carl Weathers was a damn good actor, and he sold the part, and I think they copied it off of Muhammad Ali. But, I mean, his part in these movies was integral also.
Yeah, it was. I was actually, one of the most striking things for me is how well he adopted the role. I mean, I was pretty impressed by his athleticism and his malleability. I mean, the fact that he almost looked as if he had boxed before was mightily impressive. I mean, he was light on his toes. He understood the jab insofar as, he was acting with it. I mean, he to me, he played the role really damn well. I mean, it was believable. I mean, and the costumes and the setup and the back and forth between the two, mostly from his side. It was just really well done, in my opinion. I mean, I preferred the first over the second, but I don't know. I was really impressed by Weathers, not only his acting, but just how quickly he was able to adapt. Because I'm not as sure as you guys are, but I think he played football beforehand or something like that.
He played the CFL, and he was an Oakland Raider also.
Yes, he was. Yep.
And I believe he played at San Diego University. And he played when, let me get this straight, but he played when the coaching staff there was like Joe Gibbs, John Madden, and Sid Gilman. I think he was right on it, because I had Don Horn, who was the backup to Bart Starr in the Super Bowl, Super Bowl II, I believe it was. But he actually played football on the same team Carl Weathers played on, because Horn was the starting quarterback on it. They were I think they were like D2 at the time, but they only lost like one game over like a 6 or 7 year period, because you had Gibbs, Madden, I think Ernie, who the hell was it? They had like 4 legendary coaches all on that staff, and it was a school that wasn't even considered a big-time program at the time. But Weathers played on those teams also. There was a ton of great players that played on those teams, and I think I've interviewed like 5 or 6 of them. But yeah, Weathers was definitely an athlete, and I think the other thing, John, that really sold all these movies, and even though none of them are going to be as good as the original, was the way that Stallone developed the characters of Adrian, of Polly, of Mickey. I mean, he knew how to develop these characters so people would become attached to them also.
Yeah, that's his talent as a writer, and he's been mocked a lot, but I think in a way he's been underrated, especially as a writer. I mean, his summit, like I said, I remember my dad telling me that after we saw it might have been two, and he said, God, he understands. You know, he thinks that, because my dad grew up on the streets of Chicago, and that whole gritty feel, that whole feeling of the streets, some of the dialogue, especially in the first movie, like I said, he got it, and that made sense because Sylvester Stallone was very poor as a young kid, and he grew up in some poor streets, so he was able to bring that into his writing, and he did that with all the characters, and he made them all immortal. If you think about it, I mean, okay, they've all died now in the series, but except Rocky, but
Cuff and Link. Cuff and Link, the two turtles are still alive. They were in Rocky Balboa.
That's right. Cuff and Link are still around, which is amazing.
And those were those two turtles were the same turtles he used in 1976.
That is pretty cool. And yeah, that is an amazing story that they're still around. But it just showed that, again, that he found his thing with this character and this story arc, and he knew how to make it work. And he managed to do it especially well, you know, depending on how you feel about the later sequels. You know, obviously the first two are my favorite. The first one is obviously my favorite by far. Mixed feelings on the other ones, but he still managed to move the story forward and have an arc of the characters, and that was very impressive.
All right, real quick, Hamed just asked a question, but it wasn't about Rocky. Hamed is going to be our guest tomorrow night. And remember, Hamed, these are some of the things we were going to talk about with the Canelo and the Kovalev and stuff. So tomorrow night, Hamed, we can go through all of those questions. But Hamed, if you're there was a question you asked last night on Facebook during the show that I missed. If you could send me that question again, we will address that before we wrap this up tonight. Now, let's go to Rocky IV, because this is John's favorite movie. But I think with Rocky IV, 1985, 86, this is the time of Friday Night Videos, MTV. This movie was basically a music video, John.
Yeah, absolutely. And can I tell my little Rocky III story really fast, just for people to?
I figured you'd have told it by now, but go ahead.
Well, I don't want to be rude about it. Now I guess I'm going to have to be.
I couldn't remember if it was a Rocky II or a Rocky III story, so I couldn't lead you into it because I couldn't remember.
Okay, well, what happened was I was living in L.A. in 1980, and I was getting Variety because I was actually trying to be an actor. So I was picking up the Variety every day on Hollywood Boulevard, and I read that Sly Stallone was over at a studio that was called Laird International then in Culver City. It was the old David O. Selznick studio that they filmed Gone with the Wind and King Kong, and the old classic studio. And I knew it well because I had applied for a job there a couple of times. So I thought, you know, Stallone was a god to me because when I was in junior college, I was writing and trying to do some acting thing, and I was trying to imitate him in a sense. And so I thought, well, this is my chance to see him, right? So I heard he's there working out, training for Rocky III, which we didn't know anything about the story yet, but he was there. So I went over to Laird International at about 3 o'clock in the afternoon, parked on the side. And now how do you get in, right? Well, the way I did it, and the way I did it at pretty much all the studios, was I found ways to sneak in. They can't get me now. It's been 7 years or whatever, but it's a true story. I found ways to sneak in. But with Laird International, there was no way to sneak in except walking right past the guard. They had the old-style booth right there on the side street. So that was what I had to do. So I just walked up the sidewalk and then turned in. The guard looked at me, and I nodded at him, and he nodded back. So I was in. So finding Sylvester Stallone was easy because I just walked straight ahead, and right there, it was like Soundstage 3, was a purple Lamborghini that said Sly 1 on it. So, yeah.
Hold on, what Lamborghini was that at the time? Was that like a Countach or something?
1980, so I don't know. I don't remember that, but I looked inside it, and he had a script laying there on the seat, and I'm like, holy moly. So then I walk over to the sound stage, and they had a little window on the doors, and I looked through, and I could see him in the ring sparring. I'm like, holy moly, there's Sylvester Stallone. And this soundstage had been used for some of the scenes from Rocky where, you know, he walks in and Mickey yells at him. Wasn't used for that, but they used it for some things, I believe. So I'm standing there trying to figure out what to do, and I'm like, God, this is the coolest thing. I actually walk away a little bit, and no more than 5 seconds later, here comes Sylvester Stallone. He's being interviewed. So he walks out, our eyes meet, and then he turns away and keeps talking, and he's talking about Rocky's going to be a total metamorphosis in Rocky 3, and people are going to be surprised, and it's true. You know, you've seen Rocky 3. And just so I told Mike I would say this, just so people know, there's always been this debate about how tall Sylvester Stallone is. You hear things like he's 5'6" or all this. Not true. He was about 5'9" then. He came out. He was wearing boxing shoes, so no lifts or anything like that, but built like a tank, Italian tank, you know. And about 5'9", and he's talking, and so he was about 3 or 4 feet from me, and I just stood there and listened to him. And he, like I said, he looked at me at one point. I looked at him, then I just stood there, and he paid me no mind the rest of the time. And I thought, okay, well, there you go, Sylvester Stallone. He's real. He really exists. But that car, though, guys, man, that car was really, really sharp. But that's my Sylvester Stallone moment. I almost got to see him the year before or 2 years before at Universal when he was there. He was editing Paradise Alley. Just missed him that time, so this was why I wanted to. But I did have ideas floating around in my head that I wanted to run home and get my Rocky poster and get him to sign it. But, of course, I would have got busted if I did that. But
yeah,
that was pretty cool. I was pretty happy to see Sly.
All right, so let's go back to Rocky 4, because the other thing that stood out to me there, and I know you know this, though, John, and that was Dolph Lundgren damn near killed Sylvester Stallone. He hit him in the chest so hard that it caused Stallone's heart and to hit his breastbone and begin to swell. And had he not gone to the ER and then intensive care for 8 days, the heart would have swelled until he would have died.
Yes.
So that'll tell you how real they turn these fights into.
Well, yeah, he said that when he was training with Carl Weathers that they hit each other numerous times, and it makes sense. You can't dodge all the punches when you're trying to be realistic. And yeah, he got hurt pretty bad in Rocky 4, and as I told you, that's certainly not my favorite, not even close. I don't particularly like the film. Actually, I like one scene that I think is well done, and that's the part where he has the argument with Adrian and gets in his car.
Yeah.
And
there's no easy way out there, too.
That's cool. They show flashbacks, other scenes, and I think that's really well done. And he's, of course, got a sports car that I love. So that was it. But, you know, that movie was, I think, the biggest box office, made more money than any of the other Rockies, believe it or not, at that point. Yeah, but I think
what it was the time with the Cold War, and everything was kind of corny in the mid-'80s.
Yeah, the timing was perfect, yeah.
Because I remember going to see the movie with my mom and dad. It was like a Friday night. It was the first day it was out. We went to see like the 9 o'clock showing. And we get there, and the place is packed. We couldn't even get in. We had to wait and get it. We got our ticket at 9 for the midnight show, and we sat there until midnight till we could get into the theater to see the movie. I mean, the place was packed, and I loved the movie at the time. But I was also just a little kid, and you were an old, grumpy man.
Yeah, sure. I was about 50 then too, and Jeremiah was still like, I don't know, about 10, right?
Jeremiah was still
not even that.
Balls.
Yeah, that's right.
What year were you born, Jeremiah? Like 2010?
85.
85.
I was 85.
Well, that year, okay.
That was the year. There you go.
His father's side.
Yeah.
Exactly. So. Well, yeah, because of that, I do like the movie. I mean, it's just, you know, it was same year as me. Well, no, but I mean. I did like it. I mean, I actually wish that there would be a modern Russian fighter who would adopt that sort of personality, like Ivan Drago, where, he'd play a badass and come out with a hammer and sickle. I don't know about the hammer and sickle so much, but I wish there was a Russian who just
Sergei
had
Kovalev could pull that off.
he should have. He really should have, because, he seems like an asshole.
Oh,
right?
yeah,
So,
he wants to be a racist, so he's pretty much said it
yeah,
before.
Yeah, he snores the N-word, but he's it's well, I wish he would have played that role, or like Alexander Povetkin, though I hear he's a real nice dude. But yeah, I'd love to see one of these modern guys adopt that demeanor where they're just pissy all the time and talking about, just say stupid shit. Like, honestly, if there was because we saw how fun it was for Tyson Fury to come out with the, Apollo Creed gear. How awesome would that be if we had an up and coming Russian heavyweight? Who would just say dumb stuff like, I must break you. I'd love that stuff. Let's play it up, man. Let's give us something to watch.
Well, and culturally, Rocky IV had a huge impact just because of the way people acted when Tyson Fury came out like that, John.
Oh yeah, it did, and you're right. What we were saying, the timing was perfect. It touched a chord. Especially with the, as we called them back then, the Ruskies. We had a lot going against them. Reagan was president of the United States, and the Cold War, and they had the Gorbachev look-alike, well, sort of, in the movie, and that was kind of humorous. But yes, exactly, and it was the way he turned it around and everything. Again, Sylvester Stallone just has a knack for his timing is right on, and he's one of these people, and he realizes it now that he's very fortunate in a lot of ways. Obviously, I'm not going to say it's luck what he's done, because it was planning and very clever on his part, and he's a very intelligent person, very funny person. But he just seemed to have a feel for what was going on, and he would use a lot of his own story to put it in there. And that was a time when, right, like you said, Mike, the Cold War was going on, and
yeah, but I'll tell you, the end of that movie was the dumbest thing I've ever seen. Yes. When you get all the Russians cheering Rocky, he knocks him out, and then he stands there and gives the speech, starts talking about love. It's dumb as hell. But I liked the movie overall until that happened, because that was just stupid.
Uh-huh.
It just was.
Yeah, I agree.
Stupid.
Yeah, the Russians didn't start crossing their arms and kicking their legs out, and yeah, it was dumb. Yeah, I get. I don't know, man. Those sort of moments make me cringe a bit, because it's I don't know. It strikes me as naivety, exactly. It's naive to me. The Russians, because of a boxing match, are gonna throw down the hammer and sickle and be like, all right, this is the way. It just doesn't work like that, man.
But if you think about Jeremiah, if you think about it, 1980 U.S. Olympic hockey team, Balboa beats Drago. And then by the end of that decade, the Berlin Wall has fallen, and the Russians are no longer communist.
Exactly. Thank you, Sylvester.
And Micah Ruzian.
Yeah.
Boy. Stallone doesn't get enough credit for his foreign policy.
Yeah, he ought to just run for president. And really, when you look at the 30 people that have announced they're going to run, it couldn't be any worse. All right. He can be Rocky Balboa president. But Rocky V, which is a movie that I know we're all friends with. Tricia Morrison, Tommy Morrison was in the movie. I'm one of the few people that really didn't hate the movie, but the thing that I read was that Stallone actually wrote this as the final Rocky, with the death of Rocky in it, and that he actually cried while writing it. And the original ending was Rocky gets killed in their street fight, and Adrian comes out and gives a heartfelt speech to the reporters crowded around outside the hospital about how Rocky's spirit will live on forever. And I think it was the right choice not to kill him off. What do you think, John?
Well, I understand as a writer what he was doing, and I understand the arc again, as I said in the studio. From what I read, is the ones that said, no, you can't kill Rocky. That little. I didn't know about Adrian coming out and making that little speech, or I forgot, but that sounds a little bit like Champion. If you guys saw Champion with Kirk Douglas.
With Kirk Douglas.
Yeah, and at the end, now he's a total asshole and champion, but you remember his brother and his wife come out there, his estranged wife, and say he was a champion and he was this and that to keep his image like that. And I wonder again if I'm sure Sylvester Stallone loves most of the boxing movies, not all of them, but most of them, especially the oldies from his time. Yeah, Rocky V was an interesting one. I mean, that I went to see it like you, Mike. I mean, I never missed going.
Hey, dude, I saw it at noon the day it came out.
Okay, see, the only time I didn't see the opening of a Rocky was Rocky. It was I told you it was like 4 or 5 days after.
Me too.
But next 2, 3, 4, and 5, I always went on opening day. It became kind of a tradition, and it was disappointing. It had moments, but it was kind of sluggish. And they brought the director from Rocky, John Abbottson, back to do it, so it was kind of it should have worked, but it didn't quite work. And Tommy's fine. Some of the scenes with Tommy are really well, and he does fine. And I don't know, it's just kind of clunky in places, but I don't hate it. Actually, I've watched it again actually a couple of years ago, and I think I liked it better than the other time I watched it, which isn't saying a hell of a lot, but I thought it was a little better. I think maybe it was a little hard on it. So, it was disappointing, but as we all know what happens, Sylvester Stallone makes an amazing comeback.
Well, the thing that got me was you can go on YouTube and find the deleted scenes, and if they'd have left some of those scenes in, the movie would have been exponentially better.
Exactly. I saw those scenes, and you're right. I watched those scenes, and I'm like, why didn't they leave those scenes in? And it's great scenes, more with Mickey and his image and his spirit helping Rocky, and they're great stuff. I don't know what the decision was to take those out, but that's the way it goes sometimes. It's too bad.
Yeah, and then we get to Rocky Balboa, which is another movie I went to see today. It came out. I did not hold out much hope for it, John. I don't know about you. But I can tell you this. After Rocky 1, Rocky Balboa was my favorite of them.
I actually did, because I love the fact that he was going back and he was shooting it on a low budget and he was trying to do like Rocky. So I had hope.
Yeah, but he did that with Rocky 5 a little bit too, and that didn't really work.
Yeah, well, yeah, but it had been long enough, and he made some changes. Adrian had died and everything, so there was a fresh approach. It had been a number of years. It had been, I think, 16 years, right, since Rocky 5 came out. So
yeah, 1990 to 2005 or 6 is when Balboa came out. I think it was 2006.
Yes, exactly. So I did. I had some hope, and then I started to hear little things like we did with Creed that, wow, this movie's really surprising people. And maybe that's it too, Mike, is that the expectations were so low.
Yeah.
That he directed it, he wrote it again, and it was much better than people thought, and I really enjoyed it. Yeah, I just watched it a few months ago
I watched it like 2 nights ago.
Yeah, with my girl, and she liked it, and it's good.
Well, do you think that it has more of an impact on you because of the story? Because the story to me is probably more relatable now than it was in 2006, especially where the part where he talks about he's still got some stuff he's got to get out of the basement.
Yes.
Because I feel like I still got some stuff I got to get out of the basement. But the steps caught on fire, they broke and they fell down, and I don't know how to get it out.
Actually, I thought that scene was a great scene, and again, his writing and his acting and the whole with Paulie there. What do you mean you got some stuff to do? When you haven't peaked yet, or whatever he says to him, and again, it's Sylvester Stallone just has that feel for that character. He understands him. He understands what he's thinking. It's like he's the other side. It's almost like a Jekyll and Hyde thing going on here, but in a good way. Both of them. I did have hope, but I'll tell you, when I saw it, I sat there in the theater, I was pretty amazed that he pulled it off.
Did you cry?
The parts that got to me, Mike, were the parts with Adrian. With Adrian, when he went to the ice rink and he went back. That really touched me.
I know, and the thing is this. That is why this movie is just like the first Rocky to me, because it's relatable with everybody. It's just like, if you ask somebody, John, do you want to live forever? Your first instinct is, yeah. But then, when you think about it, if I live to be 110 or 115, I got to watch everybody I love die.
Yes. Right.
And, when you think about it like that, I hate to bring the young kid down in here, Jeremiah, but Jeremiah, someday, Rocky Balboa will mean much more to you. I'm just messing with you, Jeremiah. But, so let's do it like this, because Jeremiah was much younger than us. What was your take on the Rocky Balboa movie?
Well, I mean, I'm pretty much in line with your guys' thinking, because it's, for me, Tarver was an interesting choice as the bad guy in that movie, but then when I saw him in the ring and he looked kind of flabby, I was like, oh, yeah, that makes some sense, because he was Tarver was a big deal at the time because of his stoppage over Roy Jones Jr. and he was brash and he was well spoken and actually one of the better American shit talkers we've had over the last 2 decades or so.
Like a milk dud, though.
Yeah, exactly, didn't he?
Yeah.
No, yeah.
Some people can pull off the bald head, some people can't.
Yeah, I don't know. But no, I mean, I was pretty much in line with your guys' thinking where it was very humanizing. I mean, that was the movie, I haven't seen it in years and years, but that was the movie where is that where he was giving his son the speech, and his son's on Wall Street and
stuff? How you need to shut the hell up.
Yeah, life.
Nothing will hit you harder than life.
Life. That was great, yeah.
Yeah, and then little Maria, who you remember from the first Rocky. And the thing that I was worried about from watching that, and I remember thinking while watching that movie in the theater for the first time, if he starts making out with her, they start dating, I'm just going to get up and leave.
No. That never happened.
Yeah,
no,
but
there was that kind of, there was a feel for it. There was a feel to it, though.
There was
that,
a
like,
feel that it could go that way. And if it would have happened, I would have got up, I would have walked out, and it would have ruined Rocky for me forever.
Not me. I would have been breathing heavily and.
Is Christopher Sheldon on with us asking like he's Jeremiah?
I would have cut a hole in the popcorn bucket.
Jeremiah to return the next day for another viewing. And that's just right.
Yeah. But that did worry me. I mean, from what I heard, the reason that Adrian actually refused to be in Rocky Balboa.
Yeah, I think I heard that, but there's certainly no hard feelings between her and
no,
Talia
she just thought that the character was played out.
I think she's right. It actually helped the story. I mean, you hate to see the characters die, but it actually helped because it really fit the whole dynamic, the theme of Rocky and being, other than having Paulie, and he's got a restaurant, which is cool. Time has passed him by, and he misses her so much, and she's still a very important part of the film. That great ending that he has with her and at the graveyard. So it's just, again, he just managed to find a way to make it work. And that movie was, very touching. Like I said, that ice rink when he gets back, because you do that with life, Jeremiah. You're only 18, right? So you haven't got there yet. But when you get to be about even Mike's age, you start to think about things, and that people like me, I've lost all my family pretty much. I'm the last of the Mohicans. And your mind does go back to when they were all here. I mean, I'll be listening to the radio and I'll hear a song from like 1965 and I'll go, my God, my mom and my dad and my sister were all young and we were in Oklahoma. We were all happy. And that's what it does when you watch, like, for me, when I watch Rocky Balboa, in a sense, he's all alone other than Paulie. Everybody's left him in a sense. Everybody's died. And it's tough. That's life. We all know it.
It's kind of like that back to square one kind of feel.
Yeah. Yes, exactly.
Yeah, and I mean, heck, I get that way. If I watch an old game, I'll think about where I was when I was watching it, stuff like that. And the thing is, the older you get, you think about it more. And, it's like, I know John was really close to his mom and dad. So was I, his sister. So am I. My sister's still here. But the thing is this, people always tell you that stuff gets easier, but it doesn't. It gets harder.
No.
And people can tell you, they're in a better place, but they're not, because if they're in a better place, you'd be able to see them. And that's the way I always took that, because I can tell you, especially with like my dad, there's probably not an hour that goes by where I don't think about him, because something will trigger that. And I think that's what made the Rocky Balboa movie so good, because it is so relatable no matter who you are. And our friends at the final tally at the 13th round also wanted to bring up Stallone also brought back the character Spider Rico in Rocky Balboa.
Yeah. Yes, he did. That was really cool. Yeah. Spider's eating for free at the restaurant.
Yeah, no matter what.
Yeah, and the hostess is complaining, and doesn't matter. Spider. Remember what he says in Rocky, right? You were lucky tonight, or something when he went to fight that first night. That was always a crack up. But yeah, I love that he brought Spider back. I thought that was really cool.
Yeah, and you had Little Maria come back, and the only thing that sucked is, well, you had Paulie there, but then Paulie dies before Creed, correct? What's your take on the Creed movies, John? Because I like the first one. The second one, I could have probably done without.
I really liked the first one, and I liked everything about the first one.
Yeah. And the second one was all right, but...
Yeah, but I mean, what I liked about the first Creed, again, because obviously I like Sylvester Stallone. I've admired him for years and years, and I think that's pretty clear, is he got screwed with the Oscars. His performance in that movie is incredible. I mean, Michael B. Jordan is excellent, and Ryan Coogler did a great job directing, but Stallone he got me teary-eyed when he's talking about, everything's passed me by now. Another thing you can relate to as you get older, I'm yesterday's news. You're now, and that's another thing that is, again, that he did it again. That with the dialogue and the way he did it, it was just so phenomenal. Yeah, the second Creed, I'm hoping so badly they don't make any more. They didn't even really need to make a sequel to Creed, as far as I was concerned. I knew they would, because Creed made so much money, but the second one I thought it was pretty good, but it was obviously very predictable. And I liked seeing Drago again, and Dolph Lundgren did a fine job playing Drago again. But we knew it was coming, and we know that. I mean, they have a formula, but it
wasn't a bad movie. It was just too close to the formula.
Yeah, and I think in my opinion, I think it's done. I think they ought to just let it go. I think it's lasted since 1976. It's not James Bond goes on forever, but
yeah. Remember this too.
Enough.
You know who played Spider Rico, because the final tally just brought this up. I forgot about that, but do you know who's played Spider Rico?
Pedro Lavelle.
Yeah, who actually, I think he fought Ken Norton, didn't he? Norton knocked him out in like the fifth round.
He did. He fought at the Olympic a lot of times, and he was really a hot heavyweight for a number of years. The Olympic loved him because he was always in a lot of slugfests at the Olympic until. Yeah, he got knocked out. Ken Norton knocked him out, but yeah, Pedro Lavelle, I remember very well.
And thank you for the final tally, because I had forgotten all about that. But I think that was in 1976, wasn't it?
Yes, I believe it was right around.
I think it was the same year that Ali fought Norton. They fought in September. But yeah, I think he beat Lavelle there.
New York.
And I think, because we interviewed Mike Weaver. But I think Pedro Lavelle, actually, I think his last fight, he lost like a decision to Mike Weaver. And I know that he fought a draw against Leroy Jones, who ended up going into the Larry Holmes fight somehow, 37-0.
Yeah, I can't remember who Pedro Lavelle was knocked out by in a massive upset at the Olympic. And then he fought him again and was upset again, and that was his career.
Shoot. I know he lost to Terry Kruger at the Olympic in '73, but I think he beat Kruger in the rematch.
Maybe that's what I'm thinking, but that was a big upset when he lost.
Yeah, because he only had 3 losses. He lost to Weaver, he lost to Norton, and then he lost to Kruger in '73, I think it was. 72 or 73.
Okay, so yeah, so that was the fight I'm thinking of. So he did win the rematch. Okay, but yeah, he was really popular. I mean, he fought at the Olympic a lot of times, and
and like 4 or 5 straight times, and yeah, he was going real strong there for a while, but
he ran
all
into
good
Ken
things
Norton.
end.
Well, Ken Norton was pretty
Yeah.
damn good. But,
Pretty good, yeah, pretty good.
all right, so what was your take on the Creed movies, Jeremiah, since they would be more your speed, since they're young and shiny?
Yep.
Yeah, I haven't seen either one of them, to be honest with you. I haven't seen either one. To be honest with you, it just, I've been wanting to watch the first Creed because you told me it was pretty damn good, but I just haven't gotten around to it. I mean, I don't know, man. It's like I have a tough time with some of these because I'm just not a big movie watcher anymore. It's like I every once in a while, like, we talked about the new Rambo, like that holds some appeal to me. I don't know, like for me, it's just there's like an old, I don't want to say an old world, but it kind of feels like that to me, where there's like an old world machismo lacking from a lot of these modern action flicks, and I just have a hard time getting into them. I don't know if Michael B or whatever the hell his name is. Maybe he does a fine job with it. I don't know. I just have a hard time getting into movies anymore. It's just, I don't know. A lot of the art has been watered down, and it's just not quite the same. A lot of the actors, I have a hard time believing. It's like, see, the thing with Stallone is, he grew up poor. And so for me, it feels like it's like a musician, and when they're singing about hard times and they grew up poor, there's an authenticity to it. But when, like with some of these actors and, they're growing up with a silver spoon in their hand and, then they're trying to play some hard luck kind of guy. I don't know. For me, it's hard for me to attach myself to some of these guys just because of it. That's why I still like Stallone. I just don't know much about Michael B. or, again, I don't know what his name is. But, yeah, I haven't seen either of the two Creeds.
Jordan, I think it was.
Yeah.
Yep.
So, all right. So Jerry might have put a damper on the Creed movies. But
I'm sorry, man. I'm sorry. I haven't got on. I haven't got on it. I know. I'm a big slacker when it comes to
I'm not a big fan of the second
Yeah.
one. Put it like this, though. With both Creeds, I waited until they came out on pay-per-view on the cable. I didn't go to the movie theater to see either one of them. I kept saying I was going to on the second one, but I just had a feeling it may not be as good as the first one was.
Yeah, it's kind of like this.
I was just going to say, Jeremiah, if you get one, go see Creed, because Creed 2, but definitely Creed. If you're going to watch it, it's good. Michael B. Jordan really does a good job, and Stallone is great. So it's worth your time.
Well, I kind of feel like going to watch Rocky. I kind of feel like just going to watch Rocky Balboa and crying now.
You should.
That's right. Now
you
you're
will
talking.
someday. When you're like in your 50s or 60s, you will.
Yeah, you got to wait a little bit.
Well, how about this?
Gotta
Who
live
was supposed to originally play Apollo Creed? Was it Ken Norton or Joe Frazier? Because I remember the story was it was one of those guys, but I can't remember which one. And they were actually in the ABC sports competition show. What was it called? The Superstars? Was that Norton or Frazier?
I thought it was Norton, but I can't. I'm not 100%
I think it was too,
sure.
but I'm not sure because Frazier,
Yeah.
if you remember, was... I know Frazier was into Superstars because remember that's when he jumped in the pool and he never told anybody he couldn't swim.
Yeah, he couldn't swim. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, so you got the former heavyweight champion of the world drowning in a pool and nobody knows he can't swim.
Yeah, they don't believe it. They don't believe it's happening. He's drowning. Yeah. Oh my gosh.
But
what an ending that would have been, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But, that'd been a hell of an ending. That's Creed 3. Creed goes to the Superstars competition and drowns. We can kill him off. We killed his daddy off. We can kill him off too. All right, guys. You got anything else, Jeremiah?
No, I will say that. I hope. I saw some complaints. Maybe it was after Creed 2. I can't quite remember, but I saw a few people complaining that boxing movies just aren't that good. They typically don't know how to. I heard somebody. Get your guys' opinion on this because I thought it was interesting, but I haven't seen near the amount of films that you guys have. I saw somebody complaining. I actually think it was a writer from The Ring magazine, and he was saying that. God, what was he saying? That boxing doesn't know how to create an anti-hero or doesn't know how to create a good bad guy. Like or maybe he was saying that they don't know how to create an ending where it's not all jolly and stuff. Where it doesn't
Go watch
feel
Raging
like a.
Bull. Raging Bull wasn't a jolly movie,
Yeah,
I didn't think.
Oh, was a really downer.
Champion with Kurt Douglas,
Yeah.
I don't think. The Champ. Any of the Champs. But the one I
Oh.
remember is the one with John Voight and Ricky Schroeder. Because
Schroeder.
I'll tell you
Yeah.
what, the movie wasn't necessarily outstanding. I thought it was a solid movie for a remake. But when you watch that boy sit there or lay there as his dad's dying, screaming, "Wake up, champ," it's hard not to cry. Because I know John did. 'Cause he's a
Oh yeah,
sissy.
I'm a big crybaby.
I did
cried.
too.
I
But
cried.
in my defense, when I watched it, I was 10.
Well, okay, so I was a little older.
But you know
than
what?
So
This is the thing. I've only seen that movie
little.
once because I will not watch it because it's like Old Yeller. I saw Old Yeller when I was little. I don't want to watch that lab die again, so I'm never going to watch it again. Once was enough.
See, there we go again. I haven't watched Old Yeller because I'm not seeing a dog die. No way. I won't watch movies.
No,
where
what was that
animals die.
Marley and Me movie where halfway
Yeah,
through it,
yeah.
I could feel that was going towards that dog dying, so I just got up and I left.
Yep.
I'm not
Yeah,
going to watch a dog
same
die.
thing.
Now I could sit there and I could watch somebody gun down 700 people in a field.
Yep.
That doesn't bother me, but you kill
Like
a dog and I feel bad.
Yeah, we're looking forward to Rambo. I mean, that doesn't bother you, but a
Yeah,
dog,
I mean, come
forget it.
on. He's gonna kill a bunch of people. It's not like he's gonna. Now, if Rambo was going to like a dog shelter and just killing all the puppies, I wouldn't watch it. I'd be against it.
No way. No way.
Yeah, Rambo could have like skinned everybody he killed and wore their faces and
That would be
used them
cool.
as lampshades.
That's fine. That's fine.
Yeah, but no, I hear you. I got to be honest. I mean, I watched so few movies, so I just I haven't seen anything that really made me tear up. Though I will say though, that, and this is a little off topic, that
You are heartless.
I
so
watched
that has something to do. with
I know it's true, man. I do get that quite a bit, and I think it's because of my upbringing. I don't want to elaborate on that. We're not going to get these stories, but I will say though,
and me and John will each charge you about $100 an hour. So go ahead.
Yeah.
Right.
No, but I will say, and this partly relates to my upbringing, is that I did actually watch my father, and he watched what was it, Mrs. Doubtfire. And at the time, like my mom and my dad were in a custodial dispute, and he was watching this scene where he was in court, and he was like, "Oh, like telling me I can't have my kids is like telling me I can't have air." My dad started breaking down in the movie theater, and I was like, "Fuck, this is serious." That's the only story that I have where I was like, "Oh shit," I had to fight it back a little bit.
I've never seen Mrs. Doubtfire.
I have.
I haven't.
It's not a bad flick.
It's called Mrs.
Yeah, it's not a bad flick.
Doubtfire, so I didn't really want to see it just by the name.
It's good.
Yeah, it's a pretty good flick.
It's not like.
Oh, you know what? Another
Daisy is it?
Mike, another downer boxing movie is $1 Million Baby.
Yeah, but it's a good one because you don't see the ending
very
coming.
good. Yeah, it's very good, but I'm saying that I don't know why this guy was saying that the Hollywood doesn't know how to make.
I think when I think back, because I've seen about every sports movie possible, the movies that are the best sports movies are usually about boxing or baseball.
Don't forget about Hoosiers. I enjoyed Hoosiers.
Yeah, but name me all the other great basketball movies.
Well, Hoosiers is the only one that pops in my brain.
Exactly.
So,
once again, I'm
got
right.
blood.
So.
you said you didn't say
I've
any
seen.
about
I love North Dallas 40. It was a football movie. I like the Friday Night Lights movie. But overall, I could make a list of my top 10 baseball movies, my top 10 boxing movies. I couldn't do that for any other sport.
Brian Song's another movie that had me teary-eyed when I was a kid.
Yeah,
James Caan and Billy
we're
D.
coming to the conclusion here that you're just soft. I cried when I was little. No, I can tell you though. I go in for Rocky Balboa, and they run his name across there with the music, and I actually had goosebumps watching that.
Well,
I also like Cinderella Man.
Hell yeah.
Cinderella Man
Yeah, that was a
was
good movie.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You
And
cried
for
at
the
that one,
Max-
right, Mike?
When he won, probably, because I'm a sissy like you.
Nah.
But
Yeah,
I
didn't cry.
I will not watch soccer though.
Yeah, I mean, is there such thing as a soccer movie? I mean, why would you put that
No.
boring shit?
Ladybugs with Rodney Dangerfield. Was it Ladybugs? How about
Yeah,
this?
but,
Sylvester Stallone, Victory.
Yeah, Victory.
You ever
Not
see
a bad
Victory,
movie.
Jeremiah? It's a really stupid
The
movie.
hell is
Joe.
that?
Victory
I think it
was
was bad. Yeah.
what war was that? Was it World War II? And they were like prisoners of war, and they had to play the guards. It was kind of like a retarded version of what was that football movie?
That's The Longest Yard. You're thinking of The Longest Yard.
Yeah.
They're playing guards.
No, that's what
They're
I'm saying.
playing
It was
another-
kind of like a retarded version of that. Weren't they playing something like the guards, or were they playing somebody? I don't know. I only saw it once because
We're playing the Nazis.
Yeah, the Nazis. That's what it was. I had another stupid movie, and you got to see Matilda the Boxing Kangaroo. And if anybody out there knows where I can find a copy of that movie, I've desperately searched for it for a decade. I need to see that movie.
Hey, you know what? I was going to mention real quick that scene in Cinderella Man where he goes and asks for money. He's like, "Man, I ain't got shit," and everybody's like, that was a damn good scene. That was a pretty tough one to watch too. But I was thinking, shouldn't there be good hockey movies? I mean, I actually saw the one where I haven't seen that.
You've never seen Slapshot?
No, I've seen Mighty Ducks. I've seen what was the
You've seen the
what was
Mighty
the one
Ducks,
with
but you've never seen Slapshot?
Nah, is that a kids movie or what?
Slapshot is not a kids movie. The Mighty Ducks is a kids movie.
Yeah.
Yes, I know. I'm asking.
Yeah, Slapshot's good. It's got Paul Newman in it. Yeah. It's a great movie.
Paul Newman, right?
Yeah, I did see actually one that was okay not too long ago. It's what's his name, Sean William Scott, the guy from Role Models and was it American
Goon or something?
Yeah, Goon. Have you seen the first one?
Goon ain't bad, and Christopher Shelton would like it too, if you know what I mean.
Oh yeah. I wasn't in it for all that, but actually it wasn't.
How about Miracle? About the 1980 Olympic hockey team?
I was watching that. That was.
I didn't find that good. I find it like the Ali
I didn't
movie.
see the movie that.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is this. It's kind of like you can't make a movie about Muhammad Ali because you can't really tell us anything I don't think that we already know. And the 1980 Olympic hockey team was kind of the same way. And if you remember, that movie was made by ABC like a year or two after they won that game, and Herb Brooks was played by Carl Malden.
I don't remember that, but yeah, Ali played himself in The Greatest, and then you remember Jackie Robinson played himself in a story about his life.
Joe Louis played himself too, didn't he?
No, that was Coley Wallace who played Joe
right.
Louis in that.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, 1953 movie. Yeah, not very good. Real cheapy. Best part of that movie is you see the highlights of Joe Louis's career. And Coley Wallace doesn't do bad. I mean, he had been called a Joe Louis lookalike most of his career, and he handles it okay. But
yeah, he was a decent fighter too, wasn't he?
He was. He beat Rocky Marciano in the amateurs. That was really his big claim to fame. But
I'll tell you, go ahead.
I was just going to say, some of it doesn't always work. I mean, you get Pride of the Yankees and my favorite baseball player, Lou Gehrig, and then 5 years later they make the Babe Ruth movie with William Benedict as Babe Ruth, and it sucked. It's one of the worst movies you ever seen in your life. And I mean, poor Babe Ruth.
I've never seen it. Wasn't that the one where they had him batting like wrong-handed or something, or they flipped it around on the film to make it look like it?
Yeah, well, that's the legend. I read a new book about that. It's actually not true that he actually was batting left-handed, according to what this book said. But the William Benedict Babe Ruth movie was really bad. Really bad. So it can be
the Babe with John Goodman sucked too.
Oh, that was terrible. Terrible.
And I went to the movies and seen that, so I don't know. I think the reason the majority of sports movies that are good are boxing or baseball is because I think they're probably the two most romantic sports.
Mike is a romantic. I would have never thought
I said they're the two most romantic. Well, they are. I mean, when you look at it, I mean, football's not really a romantic sport.
Well, yeah. Well, I think part of the reason, and maybe I'm wrong, I don't know, but this is just an observation that's coming on the top of my head. But I think part of it is because baseball and boxing are more individual, whereas basketball and football are team sports, right? I mean, it just feels like if you're focusing
a team
on
sport, but when you're out there pitching, it's not really. It is, but I mean,
Yeah.
you know what I mean.
Yeah, exactly. No, I get you. I mean, it's like when you're up to bat, it's just you versus the pitcher, right? And yeah, it's very individualistic compared to other sports, and I don't know. I think that's what helps a story along. And again, maybe I'm wrong, but I'm just trying to play to what you're saying here. But yeah, it's just like with basketball and football. I mean, you just have to add more moving parts. And boxing is just so damn lonely. You know what I mean? It's like, and I think that's one of the good things about the Rockies too. Is like there's conflict there, like between trainers and managers and promoters and whatnot, and it's all very real. And I mean, and that to me heightens the sense of like kind of doing this stuff on your own. You know what I mean? Like it's your ass if you don't train, no matter if somebody's trying.
Lonely
Exactly.
is the perfect word for that. I'll give you a baseball movie that nobody ever brings up when they talk about the best ones. For Love of the Game. Have you seen that one, John? Jeremiah?
Kevin Costner, very
No.
good.
It's Kevin
Yeah,
Costner, but it's
Costner.
about him. He's throwing a perfect game. They do flashbacks to his life and how he got to this point.
Yeah.
He was over the hill, wasn't supposed to have anything left.
Yep.
But that was him on the mound trying to do something very few people in the history of baseball have done. And I think the word lonely kind of pops up there again. Because really, when you look at it, a baseball pitcher and a boxer, as they said in the Rocky movie, is kind of just you against yourself a lot of times.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that was a great point that Jeremiah made, especially with boxing, because you have to be the one who pushes yourself. And if you're like a Rocky and no one else believes in you, no one thinks you could do anything, you have to keep saying, no, I'm gonna get somewhere. I'm going to keep fighting. It's a living. You got to believe that something's going to happen, and that happens in life again. And I think that's why it works so much in a lot of movies.
Yeah, but I think you also got this. It's lonely, but he has Adrian who then believes in him, which makes that happen.
Eventually.
Yeah, and it's the same thing with James J. Braddock, Cinderella Man. He has the wife. And you see them go through losing your kids, have to send their kids to their relatives. And that stuff, I don't know if that happened in his case, but I know it happened in a lot of people's cases during the Great Depression. And really the only thing I've really seen picked apart about that movie was the part of Max Baer. And the other thing is this. I've got that entire fight on DVD, or like 2.5 minutes of each of the 15 rounds. That was a boring-ass fight in real life.
Yeah,
Seriously,
that's
it was
true.
kind of like watching Tyson Fury and Deontay Wilder stare at each other without the knockdowns.
Yeah, it was a bit like that, but yeah, still a good movie. I mean, like they had to play that up, or else, I mean, if they had put that on film,
it be boring and everybody just sitting there watching it and booing. Hell,
yeah, like Max Baer's being an asshole, and then when he gets in the ring, he's not doing anything. It's like, how does this make sense?
Just standing there looking at him. But, damn, guys, we're an hour and a half. I didn't even realize.
Wow.
I thought we'd have a hard time getting an hour out of that. John, you want to come back Wednesday night? Next Wednesday
of course.
Night? All right.
This is a blast.
And if anybody wants to suggest a topic, you can hit us up on our Twitter feed at Grueling Truth. And I want to thank everybody for the comments, because we actually had a ton of comments tonight that were very complimentary.
Great.
We didn't have any questions, but we got a bunch of people that said they enjoyed listening. Hamed, who was on last week, is one of our listeners, wants to be on tomorrow night, and we will address all the Canelo bullshit and everything that goes on there, and the possibility of Canelo and Kovalev, which I think for Canelo would be a really bad idea, John.
Yeah, I agree. Kovalev is not Kovalev of a few years ago, but Kovalev would cause a lot of problems for him. He's not Rocky Fielding. He's not going to get hit with one body shot and go down or whatever. He's a good fighter. He can box. I don't know what the push is for this, but why they want to do this. But, the only thing, though, Mike, we were talking a few hours ago was, you should talk about Golovkin, because I really do believe that for whatever reason they don't want him to fight Canelo. And maybe it's like we were saying that Canelo told them, look, I had to go to hell to allegedly win that fight, the second fight. I don't want to go there again. I don't think he really wants to fight him. I know you said that too. I agree with you. I think he'll fight him if they tell him, look, you're fighting him. But I don't know if you can tell Canelo that at this point. But he prefer fighting Kovalev.
I think the Zone can tell him that, though.
About. Well, with that $360 million.
I think the Zone can get him to do whatever he wants. He may give Oscar a lap dance while Oscar wears the women's underwear again. But Canelo's now the franchise champion anyways, so whatever that.
Oh, please, let's not go there.
Before you know it, the top 10 will all be portions of the WBC title belt.
Well, I mean, actually, what's crazy is we're almost to that point. I mean, as absurd as it sounds, we are almost to that point where just about everybody in the top 10 can hold some sort of belt. I mean, think about it.
Yeah,
when you look at the 140
divisions.
Yeah, well, remember when at 140 pounds, and I wrote about this in my article about, I think this was about Golovkin and, getting screwed by the system. But at 140 pounds before, they started the World Boxing Super Series, they had Jose Ramirez as a WBC champ. They had, who was it? Josh Taylor is the silver champion. They had Regis Prograis as like the interim champion. Okay, so that's 3 of the top 10 guys right there. And then you count the WBA, which was held by, I don't know. Maybe WBO was held by Maurice Hooker at the time.
Hooker, right.
I mean, we're talking about like 6 people holding trinkets, and I don't know if the WBA had a regular champ at that time or what the hell the deal was, but we're talking about potentially like 6-7 guys holding alphabet soup titles in one division. I mean, it's ridiculous. It's a joke.
It is. Completely agree. It is. It's totally ridiculous. Makes me sick. I'm so glad that we're talking about it here a little bit at the end, but the WBC in particular, it's got to be money. It's got to be. I don't know why. The thinking I've always heard, guys, is, and this is from an insider, is that you attach a title to a fighter and it makes it more of an important fight. But I think that's bullshit. I think all it does
Me too.
is cheapen all the other titles. Yeah, it cheapens.
It does.
All the world champion. The world champion. His title is cheapened by all this. I mean, hell, soon the people that are going to see fights are going to be handed belts as they walk in to watch the film. Watch the fight.
Well, this is the thing.
Yeah.
I had an argument with somebody on Facebook. It was our friend William Pounds again, who thinks that Triple G is ducking Charlo to fight Canelo when he could easily pick up a title belt by beating Charlo. And I tried to explain to him very nicely, the way I usually do, that he's a fucking idiot because Canelo is the champion. Why do you want to fight? I mean, let's face it, Charlo barely, if he did, beat Matt Korobov. What makes anybody in their right mind think Triple G would not smash Charlo? He would smash both Charlos on the same night because neither one of them are worth a damn compared to him. Neither one of them have done anything remotely what Triple G did. And when I look at this, it goes back to it's a damn shame we can't get fair decisions in boxing because it would change the outlook on everything. Because at worst, Canelo and Triple G were 1-1. If they were 1-1, it would be hard to say you shouldn't have a third fight. And the other sad thing is with William, he says that Triple G easily won the first fight, Canelo won the second, but there's no reason to see a third fight. And that's completely asinine. That's just because you're swinging on the nutsack of Charlo, just like you do with Deontay Wilder. And
dude, it's
if Charlo was any good, he'd have done fought somebody by now. And this is the thing. Nobody's going to pay to see him get his ass beat half to death by Triple G or Canelo.
Man, it's one of those things. I mean, we've been over this, and I get a little tired talking about it just because I really don't understand why Golovkin gets so much dislike. I mean, this is a dude.
You know why he does.
Yeah, of course. Some of the reasons are obvious, but here's my thing: is this is a guy who he's not a Rocky story, but he's something like it. I mean, this is a dude. I detail this in my article, which has done pretty damn well, and I haven't heard anybody argue any of the points sufficiently to make me retract any of my statements. But this is a guy who was a silver medalist, right, in the Olympics. I mean, this guy who had a decorated amateur background, signs to one of the biggest promotional bodies in Germany, and then he's avoided, like Universum helps keep Felix Sturm and Sebastian Zibik away from Golovkin, even though he was the WBA's number one contender for a while. So what they do is Felix Sturm signs a TV contract, and then Golovkin gets some quote-unquote special status where he's then the regular champion, all in an effort to let Felix Sturm avoid Golovkin, who would have smashed him, right? He would have smashed him. He would have smashed Zibik. And Sturm was rated very highly during that period, okay?
Yep.
So if Golovkin had gotten Felix Sturm and Sebastian Zibik in 2008, 2009, he would have been probably the number one rated middleweight in the world. And he would have at least been the number one guy by 2010. So we're talking about a guy who's put – yeah, we're talking about almost a decade, right? It wasn't until 2017 that he got his shot at the middleweight champion, who gets far less flack for fighting a guy at 155 for the world's middleweight championship, defending against Amir Khan, going back down to 154, claiming that he's not physically a middleweight yet, and then bullshits everybody by going up to super middleweight afterwards, fighting Julio Cesar Chavez in a gimme fight at 164.5 pounds. So it's like all these guys put Golovkin on the shelf for years and years. And like I said, I did my research. Golovkin is the only guy besides Gene Fulmer, who was ranked number one and was put on the shelf for over 4 years. Those are the only two guys. Well, Fulmer wasn't. Fulmer actually got title shots. So Golovkin is the only guy really who was put on the shelf for almost half a decade. I mean, it's atrocious. And now he gets shit because he was 34 plus years old when he started getting the very best guys. It just doesn't make any sense, man. It's like we talked about so many times. Perception really alters reality. It's like just about everybody knows that Golovkin should have won that first fight. And if he had done so, you don't hear 95+% of this bullshit that's being floated around. It just doesn't make any sense. I mean, and not only that, for Golovkin to be even this competitive as an aggressor at this age is highly impressive in itself. And it shows me that he's a professional as well. I mean, the dude deserves respect. It sucks.
Yeah, and Canelo still don't want to fight him.
Yeah, well, it's because Golovkin doesn't have a belt, right?
No, it's
even
because Golovkin is going to put him in a world of shit. Even if he wins,
he's got to go to hell.
As John said, he's going to have to go to hell to win that fight. And Canelo, we saw him against Jacobs. Canelo don't want to go to hell to win a fight. I mean, he just doesn't.
Not again.
I mean, against Danny Jacobs, he had a chance to go after Jacobs and put him away. He decided to play it safe. He didn't want to go through hell. That's not a shot at him. I don't want to go through hell either. But I'm just saying that you can't be an all-time great fighter unless you're willing to go through that hell to me.
Well, yeah, and that's the thing. That's the funny thing too, isn't it? That's
the question that you guys were supposed to remind me to ask from Hamed. Hamed wanted to know who we thought all time was greater, Sugar Ray Leonard and Roberto Duran. I think we actually had this discussion like a year ago, but it was unquestionably Sugar Ray Leonard.
Yeah, so I'll go second, and I think it's Leonard as well. I mean, we did elaborate on this. I understand.
He quit twice.
The people who say to. Yeah, well, exactly. Here's my thing is. I understand. It's like, Roberto Duran goes up and beats Sugar Ray Leonard. It's a fantastic win by a lightweight. It really is. But my feeling is that no matter what happens in a rematch, Sugar Ray Leonard is going to beat him. To me, Sugar Ray Leonard was more adaptable. He always showed up. There were no issues about his stamina or his condition insofar as I can tell. I mean, and he just crammed so much quality into his career. I see the people who say Duran, but to me, Leonard never quit. He always showed up in shape, and I think he was more well rounded. I mean, they're both wonderful fighters.
He had better
Got a lot of
wins,
respect
too.
for both of them.
He beat Hagler.
Yeah.
I mean, Leonard beat Hagler. Duran lost to Hagler.
And
lost
Leonard's
to
never going to
Benitez.
get starched by.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, and Leonard's never going to get starched in 2 rounds by anybody.
Well, maybe Hector Camacho in like 1997.
Yeah,
What's your take on this, John?
Oh, yeah, it's Leonard for sure. I mean, I watched Roberto Duran a lot in the 70s, obviously, and he was a great fighter. He was very clever. He could box. He could punch. He had a lot, obviously, we all know. He's a Hall of Famer, a lot of tools, but Leonard was better. I mean, that's just the way I see it. He was just a little bit better than him. He could do more. He could move. His hands were faster. He only lost the first fight because he fought Duran's fight, and he just barely lost. I mean, it was very close.
That could have went either way, I think.
Yeah, he fought the wrong fight. He beat him. He beat him in the second one. He beat him in the third one. He beat him every day of the week, pretty much, if he fights like Sugar Ray Leonard. So he's a better fighter. To me, I don't throw the word great around, but I think they're both great fighters. But Leonard's just better. That's all. He's just greater.
All right. So it only took an hour and 30 minutes, but I remembered Hamed's question. John was supposed to remind me, but I still couldn't remember the question even if he would have asked me. But it just popped into my head all of a sudden. All right. Before we wrap it up, John, you get any final words?
Well, we made one plug for Intimate Warfare, so I'll say it again. Intimate Warfare is on Amazon. They were like Rocky. You're right, Mike and Jeremiah. Arturo Gatti being Italian, of course, Mickey Ward. I mean, the Blood Brothers. Dennis and I wrote it with love. Still doing pretty well, so you can check that out on Amazon.com. Just go in there and type Intimate Warfare, and then you'll see, like Mike always says, that incredible picture by Mr. Ed Mulholland, who's one of the nicest guys in the business. And you can check me out at maxboxing.com, also where we are doing pretty well and are pretty happy nowadays.
And also the Ringside Boxing Show, which you can check out John and Dennis's interview with welterweight. I don't know if he's a champion or not, but he's a welterweight. He's ranked really high, and he's going to fight Manny Pacquiao. Keith, one-time Thurman. So make sure you guys check that out also. Jeremiah, do you have anything to say to wrap this up?
Well, I would only say that Ed Mulholland is my friend on Facebook. I just wish he would make his material shareable. Like, I mean, he's got so many good picks, and I get he doesn't want people stealing his stuff. But I'm like, God, man, I just want to, a lot of the boxing world needs to see the good job that this guy does. I mean, I actually think he won an award last year for one of the picks. Actually, he did win an award, and it was for a pick, I think, at the Canelo Golovkin press conference, or maybe it was fielding. I can't remember, but the picture was wonderful. It was kind of like it was up, and you could see Canelo Alvarez, I think, being weighed in, and then you could see the crowd. It was really, really cool shot, but that's my only complaint. I just wish more people would see his work.
All right, guys. We're going to wrap it up. We'll be back tomorrow, I promise. We will have Survive in Advance tomorrow at 1 o'clock, where myself, Steve Risley, will have Anthony Servino from the FF Face-Off off to talk about NFL teams that did not make the playoffs last year that will make the playoffs this year, or at least our opinion of that. Make sure you check out the Sheridan Report with me and Bobby Sheridan tomorrow at 3 o'clock for all your gambling needs. That sounded really wrong. Also, what is tomorrow? Thursday? What else do we got? We got me, Jeremiah, and our friend Hamed will be on to talk a little Canelo, a little Kovalev, a little bit of what's going to go on this weekend. We have a few big fights this weekend that we'll preview. But for now, we're going to go ahead and wrap it up. I want to remind everybody our main sponsor is betnow.eu, where you can use the promo code TRUTH50 to get 50% additional added onto your first deposit up to $1,000. Also, the Retired Boxers Foundation with Alex Ramos and Jackie Richardson, and Sea Giant, where you can use the promo code TGT to get a discount on all your ticket steeds. All right, guys, we're going to wrap it up. I want to remind you, you can hear all of our shows on iHeartRadio, iTunes, TuneIn, Spreaker, Stitcher, Spotify, Zeno Live Radio, YouTube, wherever you find, wherever you find life in this world, you will find Inside Boxing Daily. So make sure you check us out. We'll be back tomorrow night. So for John Raspanti, Jeremiah Preisser, I'm Mike Goodpaster. You've been listening to The Grueling Truth, where the legends speak.